Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today we are going to talk about being that social leader just because you are likable. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. I'm Kale Houser. Thank you so much for joining me today. All right, I wanted to talk a little bit about this concept of social leadership, just because you're kind of that likable personality. You're that likable guy, likable gal. Everyone seems kind of drawn to you. And the word for this is really charisma, right? That you are charismatic in how you talk to people. And it makes people want to be around you. It makes people want to interact with you, want to be your friend, want to be part of your team, all those things, right? And a lot of people, I feel, and I certainly was one of these in my younger years, is as we see those people in our lives, we see those people, whether it's in our workplace, in our family, in our churches, wherever that may be, your friends, you compare yourself to them in the form of, well, they're so good at talking to people. They're so natural at relating to people. I can never be like that, or that's just not my personality. So therefore, I can't be a great leader, or I won't be as good a leader as they are. And you get into this comparison game. And I'm here to tell you that that is absolutely not the truth. You make this assumption that people are natural leaders because they are charismatic or because they are likable. And the reality is that's just plain wrong. And just because you're not, quote unquote, that guy or that gal, when you think about these types of leaders, does not mean that you cannot be an effective and awesome, amazing leader in your organization. Now, certainly those types of personalities admittedly have a little bit of an advantage, especially if you're on the other side of that spectrum of charisma and being that extrovert, right? So somebody that is naturally a people person, they naturally want to go up and talk with people and have conversations and get to know them and make them feel welcome and comfortable and all those types of things that we kind of associate with that extroverted personality. They do have an advantage, admittedly, because they don't have to deal with that barrier or that fear or that insecurity of talking and relating and connecting to other people, especially strangers. But that is not a reason for you, if you are, on the other side of that spectrum of more introverted, more reserved, more of an observer. And that was me. I wouldn't classify myself as an introvert per se, but I am absolutely an observer by nature. I would, if I'm at a party, I would much rather kind of sit back and just kind of watch people and see how they're interacting, what they're wearing, why are they wearing that, what different dynamics of group settings. And honestly, one of my favorite things to do or places to be is at the airport, because you get this sea of humanity that come from every background imaginable, different countries, different states, different lifestyles, different everything, and you get this mix. And to me, it's just so fascinating because of my observer nature, of seeing how people live and how people interact with each other, especially families and things like that. And certainly after I had kids, how different parents handle their kids in an airport type of setting, high stress and all that kind of thing. But the point being is there are absolutely techniques, actions, and words that you can use and put in place purposely to become a more effective leader if you are not already that type of a person. Now, I want to say that the reality is the con of somebody that is a quote unquote natural leader, and I think we have a basic assumption of what that type of person is, right? And we're going to use that as kind of our baseline, is they're so a lot of times worried about being likable, being liked by other people, that when it comes time to enforce rules or standards, they're less willing or able to do that because of that fear of, well, if I tell Marty that he can't come in late anymore, or I'm going to fire him, or, if you don't get this project done on time, then I'm going to have to write you a letter of reprimand, whatever that is in your company, that they're not willing to do that, or they're more lenient, or they kind of let themselves get walked over in that sense because they're a little more concerned about being likable and being liked in the organization. That's what's important to them. That's what gives them satisfaction and overall that kind of, I don't know what word other than satisfaction. All right, so a lot of times where you will see this come into play with business owners specifically is the types of people that they've hired. So a lot of times you'll see that they've hired their friends, they've hired their family members, they've hired people that they already have relationships with in some form or another, because it's easier and they already have an established relationship, right? Who doesn't want to work with somebody that you already have an established relationship with? You know each other better than a stranger, right? You don't have to go through that process of figuring each other out. The drawback is, and I'm sure you could probably think of this in your own realm of knowing that business owner that has nothing but their high school buddies that work with them, nothing but college friends that they've brought onto the scene, because that's natural. It's an available pool that they get to draw from, with the assumption of it's this already great existing social relationship or family relationship, and therefore it's going to be this phenomenal work and business relationship. And more often than not, certainly I would argue that is just not the case, because those family dynamics and those existing friendship type of dynamics are so difficult to overcome unless you are so perfectly aligned in your intentions and your goals and your expectations and willing and I can't even say it, your expectation of effort, right? And that becomes almost a hindrance. I certainly was listening to a story about a gentleman that ran a landscaping business. Sorry, not the landscaping business. He ran a auto wrecking yard, of like parts and stuff from old cars, and sold them to auto body repair shops and stuff. And he had a group of I think it was 11 of his buddies, and they all worked together and they started this business. It was his idea from the beginning. He raised it from ground level, and they were doing actually very well, several $100,000 a year type of a business. But as he went through training and he learned and stuff, he found out that his relationships with his buddies were outweighing the progress of the business, and he wasn't willing to make these decisions because of these relationships and that established norm that they had already going into it. And once he went through that process and actually kind of got rid of some of his buddies, his bros from high school, his business turned into like a $3 million a year business. I mean, it's pretty incredible, right? Because you're now focused on the business instead of going to get beers after work, right, with your buddies. The point being, there are techniques, certainly, words, absolutely, and actions that you can take to turn yourself, if you're not already that naturally charismatic person, into a phenomenally great leader. But, and there is a big but here, there is a catch to that. You, as the leader, must be genuine. You must be sincere in your desire to do so and the actions that you take. Let me say that again. You have to have that sincerity and that genuineness about you, that as you're using these different words, as you're implementing these techniques and actions in your business to create that connection and ultimately inspiration, it can't be out of just checking the box. It can't just be like, oh, I'm supposed to call you by your first name, so I'm just going to always call you by your first name, without that, kind of behind the scenes connection aspect of it, because we are ultimately social beings and we desire that connection. So the good news is, as you go through these processes and you start implementing these techniques and these actions, and you're genuine about the whole thing, you start to have these small successes, right? So people start to reciprocate back to you. They call you by your name, and they give you compliments and things of that nature, and you're building these relationships, right? Just as around your business instead of around some other, softball team or soccer team or, some other external social activity. And these successes start building on themselves, and they certainly start building on you, to where it becomes more natural to you. It becomes a more part of who you are as a leader, because you are continually doing these things and getting that feedback, and you're adjusting and all those things, right? And then soon enough, you become that person who you thought about previously of, oh, I can never be that person. And then you become that to other people. Other people start looking at you going, oh, well, Jeff over there is such a natural leader. I can never be like that. When in reality, you, Jeff, as the business leader, are the ones that have gone through this process, and they've put work into it and they've put effort into it, right? Because you understand that the payoff is ultimately pretty incredible. And then as that happens with you becoming that natural leader, people start to follow you, right? They start to interact with you on a different meaning in a different way in order for your business to grow, and you certainly build more effective teams. Okay, so I hope that kind of makes sense to you, that you don't have to be that naturally quote unquote charismatic leader, to be that guy, that gal. There are things that you can absolutely learn to do. Certainly start by getting, my 10 most inspiring words that every leader must use at kalehouserleadership.com if you haven't already. That is a fantastic baseline to start with to take your leadership journey to the next level and get that started as quickly as possible. If you have any feedback on this, I would love to hear it. Kale at kalehouserleadership.com, and it's Kale if you didn't know how to spell it, just like the vegetable. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me. Hey, no matter where you're at in the world, have a fantastic afternoon.